In the year 2147, humanity had reached a point that only dreamers and science fiction writers of the previous centuries could have imagined. The Earth of old, once crowded, polluted, and limited in resources, was no longer the only home for human life. Over decades, humanity had spread beyond the solar system, colonizing planets orbiting distant stars, and establishing thriving communities in places once thought uninhabitable. These colonies were not just settlements, they were symbols of human determination, ingenuity, and the unrelenting desire to explore the unknown. Among the many marvels of this new age, none captured human ambition more than the creation of massive interstellar warships designed to protect humanity from threats that lurked beyond the stars. One of these ships was the Aegis Vanguard, a warship unlike any other. It was a masterpiece of engineering, combining the latest advancements in weapons technology, defensive shielding, and artificial intelligence. Every inch of its hull, every system, and every weapon was designed not only to defend but to ensure that humanity could survive and thrive even in the deadliest battles imaginable. The ship was enormous, stretching longer than some small cities on Earth, and equipped with engines capable of reaching speeds no human ship had ever traveled before. Inside, the crew had access to advanced holographic navigation systems, automated defense grids, and a command bridge that could coordinate attacks with precision that would have seemed magical to earlier generations. It was more than a machine, it was a symbol of humanity's power, intelligence, and unity. The Aegis Vanguard was commanded by Captain Elena, a woman whose name was already whispered across the fleet with respect and admiration. Elena was a veteran of countless conflicts, someone who had spent her life in the service of humanity's safety and expansion. She had grown up on a small space colony at the edge of a distant system, where life was harsh, and survival depended on resourcefulness, courage, and teamwork. From a young age, she had shown an extraordinary aptitude for leadership and strategy, qualities that eventually earned her a place among the top ranks of the interstellar fleet. Despite her reputation, Captain Morozov was known for her calm, analytical mind. She never rushed decisions, always thought several steps ahead, and understood the value of every life under her command. For her crew, she was not just a leader. She was a figure who inspired confidence even in the face of the impossible. Humanity's expansion into space had not been easy. Every new colony, every exploratory mission, carried with it the risk of encountering unknown dangers. Some planets were harsh, with extreme climates, violent storms, or deadly fauna. Others were in contested regions of space, where alien civilizations might view humanity's presence as a threat. Over the years, humanity had learned to fight, to adapt, and to survive. The interstellar fleet had grown not just as a defensive force but as a deterrent against hostile powers that might challenge humanity's place in the galaxy. And yet, for all the technology and preparation, there were still dangers beyond imagination waiting in the darkness between the stars at the time this story begins. Humanity faced one of its greatest threats yet, an alien coalition known as the Krill Dominion. Unlike other alien forces humanity had encountered before, the Krill were not simply curious explorers, trade partners, or even rival civilizations. They were a united, ruthless alliance, motivated by conquest and a desire to dominate every corner of the galaxy. Their fleets were massive, their weapons devastating, and their strategies calculated with frightening intelligence. For centuries, intelligence gathered by human scouts had shown signs of their growing power. But until now, the Krill had stayed beyond the reach of human colonies. That period of uneasy peace was over. Reports from frontier colonies began to paint a dire picture. Communications were intercepted showing Krill fleets moving toward human-occupied systems at incredible speed. Planets once secure were now sending desperate calls for help. It was clear that the Krill Dominion intended not just to conquer but to annihilate resistance and assert complete control over entire star systems. The human governments convened emergency councils, sending their best strategists, diplomats, and fleet commanders into action. Among all these preparations, the Aegis Vanguard and its crew were chosen to face the forefront of this crisis. Humanity needed a symbol of power to meet the threat head-on, and the Vanguard was the perfect vessel for this task. For the crew of the Aegis Vanguard, the mission ahead was both daunting and exhilarating. Every member knew the stakes. Failure could mean the destruction of countless colonies, the deaths of millions, and the collapse of humanity's position in the galaxy. At the same time, there was a deep sense of pride. To be part of the Vanguard's crew was an honor few could claim. Every officer, every engineer, and every pilot understood that they were not just serving on a ship, they were carrying the hopes of humanity itself into a battle that could decide the fate of the galaxy. The atmosphere aboard the ship was a mixture of tension and focus. Training drills were run constantly, every weapon system was tested repeatedly, and strategies were simulated over and over again. The crew knew that any mistake could be fatal, and yet, there was no panic. Instead, there was determination. Captain Morozov spent long hours in the command bridge, studying reports, analyzing enemy patterns, and coordinating with other fleet leaders. She reviewed every piece of intelligence, considering possible tactics the Krill might employ. She consulted with her officers, debated strategies, and refined battle plans with precision. Her leadership style was calm but firm, ensuring that her crew felt confident and prepared while never underestimating the threat they faced. She encouraged her officers to think creatively, to anticipate the enemy, and to prepare for contingencies. It was a balance of discipline, foresight, and trust, one that had earned her respect and loyalty from every member of her crew. Meanwhile, back on human colonies, the news of the Krill approach had created waves of concern and fear. Families, scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens watched the stars with anxiety, knowing that forces beyond comprehension were moving toward them. But alongside fear was also hope embodied in ships like the Aegis Vanguard and leaders like Captain Morozov. Humanity had faced challenges before, from devastating wars to near-extinction events on Earth. Through it all, humans had survived by being resilient, clever, and united. The Vanguard represented all those qualities, a shining example that humanity would not yield without a fight. The day the Vanguard prepared to leave for the front lines was one of mixed emotions. Crew members said farewell to loved ones, technicians completed final checks on weapons and engines, and Captain Morozov walked the corridors of her ship, greeting her officers and reminding them of the importance of their mission. There was no bravado, no false promises of victory, only a sober acknowledgement of the risks ahead and a deep commitment to doing everything possible to protect humanity. The ship itself seemed to hum with readiness, every system online, every sensor calibrated, every weapon primed. The Aegis Vanguard was not just a machine, it was humanity's guardian, a fortress in the void of space, a symbol that humanity would stand against any force, no matter how powerful. As the Vanguard departed, leaving orbit around its home base, it carried more than just its crew. It carried the hopes, fears, and dreams of an entire species. Humanity had reached a turning point, one where courage, intelligence, and unity would determine survival. For Captain Morozov and her crew, the journey ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers they could only imagine, but they were ready. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a vast battlefield waiting to test their limits. And at the center of it all, the Aegis Vanguard sailed forward, a shining testament to human ingenuity and the unwavering spirit that had brought humanity from humble beginnings on Earth to the edge of the galaxy. The stage was set. Humanity's most advanced warship, commanded by one of its finest leaders, was heading into a confrontation that could either break or define them. The galaxy watched silently, unaware that the outcome of the coming battle would not just be about survival. It would become a story of courage, determination, and the extraordinary heights that humans could reach when united by a common purpose. Every system aboard the Vanguard was ready. Every officer knew their role. Every crew member understood the importance of their mission. And though the unknown stretched before them like a dark sea, humanity had sent its finest, and they were prepared to face whatever awaited among the stars. The news of the Krill Dominion's approach sent shockwaves across human colonies and military installations. For years, intelligence had warned of the growing power of this alien coalition, but the reality of their imminent arrival was something entirely different. Suddenly, the once abstract threat became very real. The colonies closest to the outer rim of human-controlled space began to panic, their administrators and leaders sending urgent requests for help. Communication networks buzzed with alerts, some messages fragmented or distorted due to the vast distances in space, adding to the tension. People on distant planets stared at the sky, unsure of what was coming, fearful of what they could not yet see. Panic was contagious, spreading faster than any disease, and humanity's leaders had to act quickly to prevent disorder from overtaking fear. The human fleet mobilized as fast as it could, though it faced immense challenges. Fleet command was a complex web of coordination, logistics, and timing. Ships had to be fueled, weapons checked, crew assignments finalized, and strategic plans rehearsed, all while facing the psychological weight of the approaching enemy. The Krill Dominion was not just another alien race. They were organized, relentless, and technologically advanced. They had no known weaknesses that humans could exploit, and the scale of their fleets dwarfed almost anything humanity had ever faced. For the commanders planning the defense, every detail mattered. Even a small miscalculation could result in catastrophic losses, and the human commanders knew this all too well. The Aegis Vanguard, humanity's most advanced warship, was central to the defensive strategy. Its unique capabilities made it the perfect spearhead for human resistance. But its crew knew that the mission ahead was not going to be easy. Captain Alina Morozov understood the psychological and practical weight of what they faced. The crew, while highly trained, had never faced an enemy of this magnitude. Morozov gathered her officers on the bridge, discussing battle simulations, reviewing enemy tactics, and devising strategies to compensate for the human fleet's numerical disadvantage. She emphasized not just the importance of technical skill, but also of focus, adaptability, and teamwork. Each officer's input was valued, and the discussions often ran late into the ship's artificial night, with holographic maps and projections illuminating the faces of the officers as they debated and refined their approach. Morozov knew that the mental readiness of her crew would be just as crucial as the capabilities of the ship itself. Meanwhile, Across human space, colonies began preparing in their own ways. Some hastily fortified installations, turning scientific and residential structures into makeshift defensive positions. Others organized evacuation plans for civilians, prioritizing the protection of lives over property. Supply ships were rerouted to strategic locations, bringing weapons, food, and medical supplies where they might be needed most. The sense of urgency was palpably. Decision, every action, carried weight, because the Krill would not wait. The human leadership had to think not only about the immediate battle but also about the long-term consequences of losing any territory. There was no room for hesitation. Despite all the planning, uncertainty weighed heavily on the fleet. Human forces were fragmented, with ships scattered across light years of space, and communication delays made real-time coordination difficult. The Krill Dominion, by contrast, appeared to operate as a single, cohesive force. Intelligence suggested that they used advanced algorithms and collective decision-making systems, allowing them to respond to human strategies almost instantaneously. The human fleet could not match that level of coordination, which meant that every decision, every movement, had to be calculated with extreme precision. A single mistake could expose a ship to devastating attack. Morozov and her team spent hours analyzing potential enemy strategies, running simulations over and over, trying to anticipate every possible move. Every officer knew the stakes. Failure was not an option. Within the Aegis Vanguard, preparation was exhaustive. Engineers checked the ship's engines, weapons systems, and shields, ensuring that every subsystem operated at peak efficiency. Pilots rehearsed maneuvers in simulators, practicing complex flight patterns that might be required to outmaneuver the Krill. Weapons officers calibrated targeting arrays, ensuring that laser beams, missile launchers, and plasma cannons would function with pinpoint accuracy under the stress of battle. Communication officers ran drills to maintain clarity and speed, knowing that in a chaotic battle environment, a delayed or misunderstood order could be fatal. Every member of the crew was acutely aware of their role and its importance. Yet there was also an underlying tension. They were preparing for a fight that could very well change the course of human history. The human fleet also had to grapple with internal challenges. Morale varied among crews, with some soldiers feeling confident, while others struggled with anxiety and fear. Commanders worked tirelessly to maintain focus, holding briefings, sharing intelligence updates, and reminding crews of the importance of the mission. Psychologists and counselors were involved in helping those struggling with stress, offering guidance and support. Morozov, while focused on tactical matters, also made it a point to personally check on her crew, speaking to them individually and offering encouragement. She understood that battles are not won by technology alone, but by the human spirit, and she worked tirelessly to ensure that her crew remained mentally and emotionally prepared. As the Krill fleets drew closer, the tension in the galaxy intensified. Reports indicated that the alien forces were moving faster than predicted, compressing the window for human preparation. Commanders had to make difficult decisions, sometimes risking ships or personnel to secure critical positions. Entire planets watched nervously, hoping that humanity's defenses would hold, knowing that their survival might depend on the outcome of the coming conflict. It was a time of high stakes and high anxiety, where every action had consequences that could ripple across light years. Despite the fear and pressure, moments of determination and courage shone through. Human engineers found innovative ways to improve ship defenses. Officers came up with clever tactical maneuvers to offset numerical disadvantages, and pilots practiced daring simulations to test the limits of human skill. Even as the threat loomed, there was a sense of unity among the human forces. They understood that only by working together, trusting each other, and acting decisively could they hope to face the Krill Dominion. The situation was dire, yet it brought out the best qualities of humanity: creativity, resilience, and an unyielding will to survive. Captain Morozov and her crew also faced personal challenges during this period. The pressure of commanding the Vanguard weighed heavily on her shoulders. She knew that millions depended on her decisions, and that one wrong move could lead to catastrophic loss. Yet, she maintained her composure, relying on experience, intelligence, and instinct to guide her actions. She worked closely with her officers to ensure that everyone was prepared for every eventuality, from sudden attacks to unforeseen emergencies. Every member of the crew respected her for this dedication and calm under pressure, understanding that her leadership would be critical in the battle to come. The human fleet's coordination grew more sophisticated with each passing day. Supply lines were reinforced, defensive strategies refined, and intelligence gathering intensified. Human commanders learned to adapt, using their strengths to compensate for weaknesses. They understood that while they could not match the Krill in numbers or technological integration, they could leverage creativity, adaptability, and the unpredictable nature of human decision-making to gain an advantage. Morozov's emphasis on preparation, flexibility, and precise execution became a model for other fleet commanders, inspiring confidence and focus throughout human space. That as the Krill Dominion advanced ever closer, the stage was set for the coming confrontation. Human forces, though outnumbered and stretched thin, were organized, trained, and ready to defend their colonies and people. that Aegis Vanguard and its crew represented the pinnacle of human strategy, technology, and courage. Every officer, pilot, engineer, and soldier understood that the coming days would be some of the most critical in human history. The anticipation was intense, the anxiety palpable, but there was also hope, a hope rooted in preparation, skill, and the unbreakable determination of humanity to face any challenge. No matter how great. In this period of rising challenge, humanity proved that it could stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds. The story of preparation, strategy, and determination highlighted not just the stakes of the coming battle but also the strength, resilience, and unity of the human spirit. Even as the Krill forces approached, human forces were ready not just to survive, but to fight back with everything they had. The galaxy watched, unknowingly on the brink of witnessing humanity's courage and ingenuity, as the stage for an epic confrontation was carefully, deliberately set. The moment the Krill Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. On human senses, the alien ships appeared like a massive dark storm blotting out the stars, stretching across the void with an almost unnatural coordination. The sheer scale of their fleet was staggering. Thousands of vessels, ranging from small attack craft to enormous dreadnoughts, moved with a precision that seemed almost mechanical. Human forces had seen large fleets before, but nothing like this. Even with the Aegis Vanguard at the forefront, the crew could feel the enormity of the threat pressing in from every direction. There was no room for hesitation, no chance to second-guess moves. The Krill were coming fast, and the battle that would decide the fate of humanity was about to begin. The first shots rang out like distant thunder, and the human fleet felt the full force of the Krill assault. Lasers and energy beams tore through the void, striking human ships with devastating accuracy. Explosions lit up the darkness as smaller human vessels were obliterated, debris scattering across space like deadly fireworks. The cries of alarms, the flash of emergency lights, and the constant stream of incoming data created an atmosphere of chaos aboard the Aegis Vanguard. Every officer and crew member felt a mixture of fear, adrenaline, and focus. This was the moment they had trained for. Yet nothing could fully prepare them for the sheer intensity of facing an enemy that was so vast and so efficient. Captain Alina Morozov stood calmly on the bridge, her eyes scanning the holographic displays showing enemy positions, trajectories, and weapon arcs. Every decision she made had immediate consequences. She issued commands with precision, directing fighter squadrons to intercept incoming attack waves, maneuvering the Vanguard to avoid deadly volleys, and activating defensive systems just in time to repel devastating blows. Her presence alone provided a sense of stability to the crew. They trusted her implicitly, and that trust was crucial. In these moments, there was no room for hesitation, doubt, or panic. Every second mattered, and every move could mean the difference between survival and annihilation. The Krill Dominion's tactics were unlike anything humanity had faced. Their ships moved in perfect formation, exploiting weaknesses and coordinating attacks with near-perfect timing. Some vessels drew human fire away from the main fleet, acting as decoys, while others struck at critical points in the human defense. It became clear that the Krill were not just strong, they were intelligent, adaptive, and ruthless. Human commanders realized quickly that conventional strategies would not be enough. They needed something bold, something unexpected, to turn the tide of battle. Morozov and her officers communicated rapidly, sharing observations and adjusting strategies on the fly. Every maneuver was tested, refined, and executed under extreme pressure. The stakes could not have been higher. Amid the chaos, the Aegis Vanguard made a daring move. Captain Morozov activated the ship's advanced weapon systems, a combination of energy cannons, missile arrays, and targeted pulse beams that could strike multiple targets simultaneously. This was a risky strategy, as it required precise timing and coordination to avoid collisions, friendly fire, and overextension of the ship's capabilities. The crew executed the plan flawlessly. Energy beams sliced through the Krill formations, tearing apart enemy ships with speed and precision. The sheer destructive power of the Vanguard stunned both the Krill and human observers alike. For the first time, it seemed that humanity had found a way to challenge the overwhelming might of the alien fleet. The Krill, however, were not so easily defeated. Some of their vessels adapted to the human assault, changing formations and retaliating with sudden, violent attacks. The battle became a deadly dance across space, with ships weaving in and out of fire, dodging attacks, and launching human fighter squadrons swooped around massive enemy ships, engaging in close combat where skill, timing, and courage were critical. Explosions rocked the smaller crafts, forcing pilots to make split-second decisions to survive. Each move required complete trust in the ship's systems, the crew, and in each other. It was a test not only of technology but of human nerve and teamwork. Inside the Vanguard, the crew worked like a single organism. Weapons officers targeted incoming threats. Shields adjusted dynamically to absorb the heaviest blows. Engineers rerouted power to damaged systems, and pilots executed evasive maneuvers with split-second precision. Captain Morozov coordinated every aspect, issuing orders with a calm authority that cut through the noise and confusion of battle. The crew responded instantly, anticipating her needs, correcting minor errors, and maintaining focus even as explosions shook the ship. The intensity of the engagement was unlike anything they had experienced before, yet their training and cohesion allowed them to stay effective. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to prove that humanity could stand against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. As the battle escalated, a critical moment arrived. The Krill had identified what they believed was a weakness in the Vanguard's defenses and concentrated a massive attack on the ship. Energy beams, missiles, and pulse cannons converged from multiple directions, threatening to overwhelm even the Vanguard's advanced shields. The bridge was tense. Every officer knew that this could be the end. Morozov made a bold decision. Instead of retreating or dispersing her forces, she ordered a precise counterattack designed to exploit the Krill's overconfidence. Using the Vanguard's AI-assisted targeting systems, she pinpointed the most vulnerable ships in the Krill formation. Energy beams and missiles were fired with perfect timing, striking the enemy at their weakest points. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Krill fleet, confident in their overwhelming superiority, began to falter. Ships that had been coordinating with machine-like precision suddenly found themselves vulnerable. Their formations broke apart under the unexpected human assault. Confusion spread among their ranks, and panic began to set in. Human pilots pressed the advantage, weaving through the gaps in enemy lines, striking decisively at exposed vessels. The tide of battle, which had seemed so heavily in the Krill's favor just moments before, began to shift. Humanity's courage, ingenuity, and the precise execution of the Vanguard's systems were turning the impossible into reality. Throughout the battlefield, human forces rallied. Seeing the Vanguard's success, other ships coordinated their attacks more effectively, using the distraction created by the Vanguard to target key Krill vessels. Engineers on smaller ships improvised emergency measures to protect themselves while taking advantage of openings in the enemy's defenses. Fighter pilots performed daring maneuvers, inspired by the courage and precision of the Vanguard. Even as casualties occurred, morale rose, fueled by the realization that victory, while still uncertain, was now within reach. The Krill, who had once appeared invincible, were beginning to crumble under the unexpected human counterattack. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Morozov remained focused. She knew the importance of maintaining control, of keeping the crew disciplined, and of continuing to exploit the enemy's weaknesses. Each decision was deliberate, balancing aggression with caution. She coordinated with Fleet Command, ensuring that human forces took advantage of openings while minimizing unnecessary losses. Her ability to maintain calm and think strategically under extreme pressure was critical. The crew, inspired by her leadership, responded with unmatched precision, executing complex maneuvers that would have been impossible without complete trust and coordination. By the end of this critical engagement, the battlefield had transformed completely. The Krill Dominion's carefully planned assault had been disrupted. Ships that had once moved with terrifying coordination now moved erratically, trying to regroup under pressure. Human forces, led by the Vanguard, had seized the initiative. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had turned into a battle where humanity could dictate the terms. The Aegis Vanguard, at the center of the fight, had not only survived a nearly impossible onslaught but had demonstrated the full power, ingenuity, and courage of its crew. The Krill, for the first time, were uncertain, their confidence shaken, and their strategies disrupted. This escalation and critical moment marked a turning point in the engagement. Humanity, through a combination of advanced technology, strategic brilliance, and the unbreakable will of its people, had managed to challenge an enemy that had seemed unbeatable. The battle was far from over, but the morale of human forces had soared. The Krill Dominion, once so intimidating, now faced an adversary capable of unexpected brilliance and decisive action. The Aegis Vanguard had proven itself not just as a warship, but as a symbol of human resilience and determination. It had transformed a moment of potential defeat into an opportunity to strike back, setting the stage for the eventual resolution of the battle. The battlefield, which had moments ago been filled with chaos, destruction, and uncertainty, slowly began to change. The tide of the conflict had shifted, and humanity, against all odds, was beginning to gain the upper hand. Captain Elena Morozov and her crew aboard the Aegis Vanguard had achieved what many had thought impossible. They had broken the cohesion of the Krill Dominion fleet and forced the alien forces into disarray. But even as this small victory unfolded, the work was far from over. Every officer and crew member knew that the battle was not yet won. The enemy still had formidable numbers, and their desperation could make them even more dangerous. Morozov's mind was already working through the next steps, strategizing to turn the advantage into a decisive victory while minimizing losses on the human side. The human fleet, inspired by the courage and effectiveness of the Vanguard, began to act with newfound confidence and coordination. Ships that had previously hesitated, unsure of how to approach the enemy, now moved boldly, taking advantage of the openings created by the Vanguard's precise strikes. Pilots executed daring maneuvers, dodging enemy fire while striking at krill vessels that had been exposed by the breakdown in formation. Engineers on every ship worked tirelessly, repairing damage, rerouting power, and ensuring that weapons and shields were functioning at peak efficiency. The human fleet had shifted from a defensive posture to an offensive one, and the transformation was evident in every exchange of fire. Captain Morozov focused on maintaining this momentum. She understood that in battles of this scale, hesitation or misjudgment could allow the enemy to regroup. Using the Vanguard's advanced sensors and targeting systems, she identified critical krill vessels whose destruction or capture could cripple the enemy's ability to fight effectively. These included massive warships, supply carriers, and command ships that coordinated the movement of the fleet. With careful precision, the Vanguard struck these targets with coordinated energy blasts, missiles, and pulse beams, overwhelming the enemy's defenses. The destruction was devastating. Krill ships that had seemed untouchable moments ago were reduced to fragments, drifting lifelessly through space. As the battle progressed, human forces demonstrated remarkable adaptability. They had learned from the initial clashes, adjusting their strategies to exploit the enemy's weaknesses. Smaller ships operated in swarms, distracting the krill while the Vanguard delivered devastating strikes to high-value targets. Pilots and crews improvised when plans did not go as expected, using every tool and weapon at their disposal to maintain the offensive. Even under heavy pressure, the human forces showed incredible discipline, coordinating attacks across vast distances in space, proving that their success was not due to luck but to skill, preparation, and determination. The Krill Dominion, meanwhile, struggled to maintain cohesion. Their initial confidence, born of numerical superiority and technological prowess, began to collapse under the sustained human assault. Command ships were destroyed or forced to retreat, communication lines broke, and their formations fragmented. Some krill vessels panicked and without orders, attempted desperate maneuvers to escape destruction, only to be intercepted by human fighters. What had once been a disciplined, terrifying force now faced confusion and fear. The human fleet, seizing every opportunity, pressed harder, exploiting every crack in the enemy's defenses. Victory was within reach, but it required careful management to ensure that it was complete. Captain Morozov made the decision to push the advantage fully. She coordinated with other human commanders, issuing precise orders for the fleet to encircle the remaining krill forces. This strategy relied on timing, communication, and flawless execution. Every ship had to move in perfect synchronization to prevent the enemy from slipping through gaps in the formation. It was a risky plan. Failure could allow the krill to regroup and prolong the conflict, but the crew of the Vanguard executed it with precision. Fighters raced ahead, cutting off escape routes, while larger vessels held positions that prevented the enemy from regrouping. The krill were trapped, their options dwindling with each passing minute. The final phase of the battle was intense. Krill ships, desperate to survive, launched a barrage of attacks in a last-ditch effort to break through the human lines. Explosions lit up space as shields held firm, energy beams collided, and missiles were intercepted or redirected. The Aegis Vanguard bore the brunt of the assault, taking hits that would have destroyed lesser ships. Yet, thanks to its advanced defensive systems and the skill of its crew, it endured. Weapons officers worked tirelessly, recalibrating targeting arrays and managing energy flow, while engineers repaired damage faster than it occurred. Captain Morozov's calm command and quick decision-making ensured that the ship remained operational, a bastion of strength amid the chaos. As the minutes stretched into hours, the Krill Dominion's resistance weakened. Command ships were destroyed, supply lines severed, and fighters overwhelmed. The human fleet moved systematically, striking remaining enemy vessels with efficiency and precision. The once mighty krill formation had become a scattering of isolated ships, unable to communicate or coordinate effectively. Panic spread among the alien forces as they realized that their initial superiority had been shattered. Every successful strike by human forces further demoralized the krill, turning what had seemed like a desperate defensive fight into a comprehensive victory. Throughout the battle, the crew of the Aegis Vanguard remained the heart of the operation. Pilots, engineers, weapons officers, and tactical commanders all worked together seamlessly, embodying the human traits of courage, ingenuity, and determination. They were not just operating a ship, they were executing a strategy that relied on trust, skill, and quick thinking. Captain Morozov coordinated every action, anticipating enemy moves and adapting tactics in real time. Her leadership inspired confidence and focus, allowing the crew to perform beyond the limits of what anyone had thought possible. The Vanguard became more than a warship. It was a symbol of human resilience and the embodiment of humanity's fighting spirit. As the battle reached its climax, the remaining krill forces attempted a retreat. Some ships tried to flee through hyperspace, while others surrendered or were destroyed outright. The human fleet, having gained control of the battlefield, allowed the retreating ships to escape selectively, recognizing that pursuing every vessel could risk overextension and unnecessary losses. Captain Morozov and her officers ensured that the victory was decisive yet measured. Humanity had won, but it was a victory won with intelligence, restraint, and precision rather than sheer force alone. By the end of the engagement, the battlefield was a scene of triumph. Human forces had demonstrated superior strategy, adaptability, and courage. The Krill Dominion, once seen as an unstoppable force, had been repelled and shattered. Colonies that had feared imminent destruction were now safe, at least for the time being, and humanity had proven that it could stand against overwhelming odds. The Aegis Vanguard, battered but operational, that stood at the center of this victory, a testament to the skill and determination of its crew and the leadership of Captain Morov. In the aftermath of the battle, there was a sense of relief, pride, and reflection among the human forces. They had faced an enemy that many had considered unbeatable and had emerged victorious. The importance of preparation, training, strategy, and courage was evident. Every member of the crew understood that their actions had contributed to something far larger than themselves: the survival of human colonies and the demonstration that humanity would not be conquered without a fight. Victory also carried lessons for the future. Humanity realized the importance of adaptability, communication, and leveraging every available advantage, even against seemingly insurmountable odds. The Aegis Vanguard had shown that technology alone was not enough. It was the combination of human ingenuity, teamwork, and leadership that had secured the win. These lessons would shape future strategies, fleet designs, and training programs, ensuring that humanity could face whatever threats the galaxy might bring next. Captain Morozov and her officers, while proud, also recognized the costs of battle. Ships had been damaged, lives risked, and resources spent. Yet the victory was complete, and humanity's position in the galaxy was stronger than ever. The resolution of this engagement was not only a triumph of military skill, but also a testament to the resilience, intelligence, and unity of human civilization. In the end, the battle demonstrated that, even against a powerful and terrifying enemy, humanity could prevail. The combination of leadership, preparation, bravery, and adaptability had turned a dire situation into a moment of triumph. The Aegis Vanguard, and the crew that commanded it, had proven that human courage and strategy could overcome overwhelming odds. The resolution of this battle marked a turning point, not just in this conflict, but in the history of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. It was a moment that would be remembered, studied, and celebrated for generations to come. The battle was over, but the echoes of its intensity lingered throughout human space. The galaxy, once quiet and tense in anticipation of the Krill Dominion's arrival, now breathed a collective sigh of relief. For the first time in decades, humanity had faced an overwhelming threat and emerged victorious. Captain Alina Morozov and the crew of the Aegis Vanguard returned from the battlefield not only as survivors but as legends. They had shown that human courage, ingenuity, and resilience could overcome even the most formidable odds. The aftermath of the battle was a time of reflection, celebration, and careful consideration. As humanity began to understand the full significance of what had just occurred, across the human colonies, news of the victory spread like wildfire. Holographic broadcasts and communication networks carried the images of the Vanguard, battered but triumphant, and the stories of daring maneuvers and decisive strikes. People celebrated in streets, spaceports, and stations, waving flags and cheering for the fleet that had protected them. Survivors of the battle, from fighter pilots to engineers, were hailed as heroes. The Aegis Vanguard became a symbol of hope and determination, an embodiment of the spirit of humanity. For many, it was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, courage and unity could turn despair into triumph. The victory also prompted deep reflection among military leaders, scientists, and ordinary citizens alike. Humanity realized that the Krill Dominion had been far more powerful and coordinated than any previous enemy. The narrowness of the victory emphasized both the strength and vulnerability of human forces. Commanders analyzed every detail of the battle, examining strategies, successes, and mistakes. Lessons were carefully recorded to improve training, fleet coordination, and defensive tactics for the future. Humanity understood that victory today did not guarantee safety tomorrow, and preparation, intelligence gathering, and strategic innovation would remain essential. For the crew of the Aegis Vanguard, the days after the battle were a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and pride. The ship itself bore scars from the fight-damaged armor plates, scorched surfaces, and systems pushed to their limits. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair and upgrade every component, ensuring that the Vanguard would be ready for any future threats. Pilots and tactical officers debriefed, sharing experiences, analyzing enemy strategies, and discussing what had gone right and what could have been done better. Every crew member carried memories of intense moments, narrow escapes, and acts of bravery that would become personal and professional stories for the rest of their lives. Captain Morozov, though proud of her crew, spent much of her time reflecting on the gravity of what they had accomplished. She understood that leadership in battle was not about glory, it was about responsibility. Every decision she made, every order she gave, had affected the lives of hundreds of crew members and millions of civilians across human space. She felt the weight of that responsibility deeply, yet she also recognized the importance of celebrating the human spirit, the unity, and the courage that had brought victory against impossible odds. She met with her officers and crew, praising their performance while emphasizing that continued vigilance was necessary. Morozov's leadership extended beyond battle strategy. It included nurturing morale, reinforcing discipline, and fostering a sense of purpose and pride. The colonies affected by the krill threat began the slow process of rebuilding. Infrastructure that had been damaged or destroyed was repaired, supply chains restored, and communities reorganized to prepare for the possibility of future conflicts. Scientists and engineers worked to strengthen planetary defenses, develop better communication networks, and ensure that populations were protected. The victory had been a turning point, but humanity understood that the galaxy remained a dangerous place. Reflection and preparation became central to the recovery process, emphasizing that lessons from this battle could guide strategy for decades to come. The psychological impact of the battle was profound, for soldiers, crew members, and civilians alike. The experience underscored both the fragility and resilience of life in a galaxy filled with unknown dangers. Survivors spoke of moments of fear and uncertainty, of witnessing both destruction and heroism, and of relying on human ingenuity to survive against an enemy that seemed invincible. These stories circulated through colonies and fleets, inspiring new generations to train, innovate, and prepare. Humanity's sense of identity was strengthened, its courage, resourcefulness, and solidarity had been tested and proven. The victory over the Krill Dominion became more than a military success. It was a cultural and emotional milestone that united humanity across vast distances. The Krill Dominion, meanwhile, was forced to re-evaluate its strategies and intentions. Once confident in their superiority, the alien coalition now faced the reality that humanity could adapt, fight effectively, and even turn the tide of battle. Their losses were significant, and their forces were demoralized. The humans' resilience and tactical ingenuity had shattered the myth of Krill invincibility. Across the galaxy, intelligence reports indicated confusion and debate among Krill commanders, as they struggled to understand how a smaller, less technologically integrated force could overcome their might. Humanity's victory had sent a clear message. Any attempt to underestimate human determination would be met with swift and decisive consequences. In the months following the battle, humanity commemorated the courage and sacrifice of those who had fought. Memorials were established on key colonies and aboard space stations, honoring not only the fallen but also the valor of those who had survived. Stories of individual bravery: pilots who risked their lives to protect their comrades, engineers who repaired critical systems under fire, and officers who made split-second decisions that saved lives were shared widely. The legacy of the battle became a source of inspiration, reminding humanity of the potential within each individual and the power of working together toward a common goal. The Aegis Vanguard and its crew continued to hold a place of special honor. The ship itself, now fully repaired and upgraded, was seen as a symbol of resilience and technological achievement. Captain Morozov, while modest about her role, became a figure of admiration across the human colonies. She was celebrated not only for her tactical brilliance but also for her calm leadership, her ability to inspire loyalty, and her unwavering dedication to the safety and success of humanity. Her reflections on the battle emphasized that victory was not about individual heroism alone but about the coordinated efforts of an entire team working in harmony under extreme pressure. As humanity looked to the future, the battle served as a reminder that vigilance, preparation, and unity were essential. Colonies strengthened their defenses, fleets were upgraded, and training programs were enhanced to ensure that the lessons of the Krill conflict would guide future generations. The experience reinforced a sense of purpose. Humanity had faced a nearly unbeatable enemy and prevailed, demonstrating the value of courage, intelligence, and collaboration. The knowledge gained from this battle would shape military doctrine, leadership practices, and the development of new technologies for years to come. At the same time, there was room for contemplation about the broader implications of the battle. Humanity had proven its strength, but it had also seen the vulnerability of its colonies and the fragility of its fleets in the face of overwhelming force. Leaders, scientists, and citizens reflected on the moral responsibilities that came with power and technological advancement. The victory had shown that humans could overcome incredible odds, but it also reminded them that wisdom, foresight, and ethical decision-making were just as important as firepower. The reflections on the battle shaped not only military strategy but also humanity's vision of its place in the galaxy. Ultimately, the aftermath of the battle was a blend of relief, pride, and forward-thinking. Humanity had survived a trial by fire and emerged stronger, more confident, and more united. The memory of the Krill Dominion's initial assault served as a powerful motivator for continued vigilance and preparedness, while the story of the Aegis Vanguard's heroism became a symbol of what humans could achieve when courage, intelligence, and teamwork were combined. The battle had reshaped the balance of power in the galaxy, elevated humanity's reputation, and left a legacy that would inspire generations. For Captain Morozov and her crew, the reflections went beyond strategic and tactical lessons. They remembered the fear, the adrenaline, and the moments of uncertainty. understanding that those experiences had forged bonds and resilience that could never be broken. Every crew member knew that they had been part of something extraordinary, a story that would be told long after the battle was over. The victory was not simply about defeating an enemy. It was about demonstrating the heights of human potential when faced with overwhelming challenges. It was a story of courage, determination, and the unyielding spirit that defined humanity's place among the stars. In the end, humanity's triumph over the Krill Dominion became more than a historical event. It was a defining moment that reshaped collective understanding of strength, resilience, and strategy. It reminded humanity that even in the face of impossible odds, hope, intelligence, and unity could prevail. The aftermath was a time of reflection, learning, and honoring those who had fought, and it set the stage for a future in which humanity would continue to explore, defend, and thrive among the stars. The story of the Aegis Vanguard and the crew that guided it through the most critical battle of their era would live on, not only as a record of victory but as a testament to the courage, ingenuity, and spirit of an entire species that refused to be defeated.